Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Pooja Mehta from Inday Kumar Gujral, Punjab Technical University, Kapurthala, Punjab. Today we are going to talk on module Attitude Formation and Change from paper Organizational Behavior. After completing this module, you will be able to understand the theories of attitude formation and change, describe the sources of attitude formation, illustrate various barriers to change the attitude and ways to overcome the barriers. Attitude of employees is very important for management because of its influence on the behavior. Bringing about the desirable change in the attitude and values of the employees is the biggest challenge for the management. This module will focus on understanding various theories underlying the procedure of changing the attitude and various forces that promote the change and also the forces that hinder the change. Dear students, now we are going to discuss theories of attitude formation. How do attitudes develop and how do attitudes change? To answer this question, a number of theories have been postulated by various psychologists. These theories explain the process of attitude formation and change. Based on the psychological process involved in understanding the attitude formation and change, these theories can be categorized into three categories: cognitive consistency theories, functional theory, and social judgmental theory. Now we will discuss cognitive consistency theory. These theories assume that people seek consistency between their attitudes and behavior. Human beings usually endeavor to reconcile their divergent beliefs, attitudes, and behavior to attain consistency and to appear more rational. Any inconsistency leads to discomfort, anxiety, and tensions. Therefore, forces are initiated to return an individual to the state of equilibrium, where attitudes and behaviors are consistent. This can be done by either altering the attitude or by developing rationalization for the discrepancy. In brief, we can just say that all consistency theories focus on inconsistencies which occur between beliefs, attitudes, and behavior. A few important consistency theories are balance theory, Albelson's extension of balance theory, and congruity theory. Firstly, we will discuss balance theory. Balance theory of attitude was given by F. Heather. This theory focuses on consistency in the judgment of other persons and the issues that are linked with some form of relationship. According to this theory, three elements, the person, the other person, and the impersonal entity, are involved in the process of attitude formation. Between these three elements, two basic types of relationships, sentiment relationships and unit relationships, exist. Sentimental relationships include sentiments involved between the elements, and unit relationships describe that the two elements are perceived as together. Both sentiment relationships and unit relationships can be either positive or negative. Dear students, please look at the exhibit given here. This exhibit clearly explains that the three elements, the person, the another person, and the impersonal entity, they are related with each other with the help of two relationships, sentiment relations and unit relations. Sentiment relations and unit relations both are of positive type or of negative type. Dear students, having seen the exhibit, we can say that this theory explains that generally people tend to perceive other persons and the objects linked to them so that state of balance is obtained in the system. State of balance exists if number 1, 3 relationships are positive, number 2, 2 relationships are negative and 1 is positive. On the other hand, state of imbalance exists if number 1, 3 relationships are negative or 2 relationships are positive and 1 is negative. The balanced states are stable and unbalanced states are relatively unstable. Whenever any imbalance arises, it leads to the state of tension and discomfort which motivates the person to restore the balance by changing the relations. The second consistency theory is Albelson's extension of balance theory. Albelson in his theory suggested 4 modes of resolving imbalance in cognitive structures of attitude. These 4 modes are denial, bolstering, differentiation and transcendence. The first mode is denial. Denial refers to denying the relationship when imbalance occurs. By denying the relationship, we can avoid the imbalance situation. Second mode to maintain the balance is bolstering. Bolstering refers to adding another issue in the main issue. Third mode is differentiation. Differentiation refers to splitting one of the elements into 2 elements that are negatively related to each other and in opposite ways to the other elements in the system. The fourth mode of resolving the imbalance is transcendence. Transcendence means combining the elements into larger ones. These 4 processes given by Albelson occur in a hierarchy. The order of the processes is based on the assumption that the least effortful solution will be implemented first. The theory underlies the role of persuasive communication and interpersonal attractiveness in changing the attitudes of an individual. Congruity theory. Congruity theory was proposed by C.E. Osgood and P.H. Tenenbaum. This theory of attitude is very similar to the balance theory. This theory established that evaluation of the source and the concept that are linked by associative or dissociative assertion should be changed. The state of congruity occurs when a source and concept which are positively associated have the same evaluations and a source and the concept that are negatively associated have the opposite evaluations. Congruity is the stable state and incongruity is relatively unstable state. Therefore, whenever incongruity occurs, it leads to change of attitude. This theory suggests that the change in attitude is desired to resolve the state of incongruity. Affective cognitive consistency theory. Affective cognitive consistency theory was given by M.J. Rosenberg. This theory is majorly concerned with a person's overall attitude towards an object and his beliefs about relationship between the object and his values. This theory explains what happens within an individual when change in the attitude takes place. It assumes that when attitude towards an object or a person is altered or changed, relationship between affective and cognitive components of attitude is also changed. In addition to this theory also explains that the state of inconsistency occurs when an individual's attitude toward the object is inconsistent with his knowledge towards the object. When the inconsistency is beyond the tolerance limit, the individual is motivated to reduce the inconsistency by changing one or both components of the attitude. Change in the affective component leads to change in the cognitive component in order to maintain consistency between the two. Persuasive communication can be used to change affective component of attitude by changing the cognitive component. It means that additional information can be provided to the individual to change his cognitive component, which leads to the change in overall attitude towards the object. Next theory of attitude is cognitive dissonance theory. Cognitive dissonance theory was proposed by Festinger in the late 1950s. Dissonance means inconsistency, discrepancy, or incompatibility. Cognitive dissonance refers to any incompatibility which an individual may perceive between his two attitudes or between his attitude and behavior. The theory established that any form of incompatibility or discrepancy leads to discomfort, and therefore the individual will attempt to reduce that incompatibility in order to restore the state of consistency. The theory assumes that people seek consistency among their attitudes and behavior. Therefore, in order to achieve the same, they either change their attitude or behavior or develop rationalizations for the discrepancy. The desire to reduce the inconsistency is determined by three factors. First factor is importance. Importance refers to the importance of elements creating discomfort. If the elements creating the dissonance are very important for the individual, person will attempt harder to reduce it. He will either change the attitude or the behavior to reduce the dissonance. But if the elements are relatively unimportant, the pressure to reduce the dissonance will be very low. Second factor is influence. It refers to the degree of influence an individual believes that he has over the elements. If the individual perceives that dissonance is due to the factors which are under his control, he will try to reduce it. But if he believes that dissonance is beyond his control, he will less likely to reduce dissonance. The third factor is rewards. It refers to the rewards associated with the dissonance. High rewards associated with high dissonance tend to reduce the tension inherited in the dissonance. The next theory which we are going to discuss is functional theory. Functional theory of attitude focuses on the need for understanding the purposes or functions of attitude. Attitude serves different functions for different individuals or for same individual but in different situations. The theory assumes that every individual has personal need for changing the attitude. Therefore, an understanding of functions served by the attitude is important in selecting the procedure to change the attitude. Another alternative approach to functional theory of attitude was given by Kellman. He proposed 3 processes for attitude change. These 3 processes are compliance, identification, and internalization. This theory focuses on the types of social relationships that occur in social influence situations. Compliance. Compliance occurs when attitude is formed or changed in order to gain a favorable impression from another person or a group. Identification. Identification occurs when a person forms or changes the attitude that helps him establishing or maintaining a self-defining relationship with the influencing agent. Internalization. Internalization means adopting a particular attitude because it is congruent with one's overall value system. Social judgment theory. This theory was originated by Sherif and Hovland. The theory explains that how a person's existing attitudes distort attitude towards some other objects and how these judgments mediate the process of attitude change. In simple words, we can say that a person's initial attitude towards an object provides standards or reference points against which he evaluates other opinions. These views of attitude can be defined in terms of attitudinal continuum, which is comprised of latitudes. Latitude of acceptance provides the range of opinion which are acceptable for an individual and can best describe his own stand. Latitude of rejection provides the range of opinions which are objectionable for an individual. The latitude of non-commitment provides the range of opinions which a person finds neither acceptable nor objectionable. Therefore, this theory applies the principle of judgment on the process of attitude change. Dear students, now we will discuss formation of attitudes. Attitudes are not inherited, but they are acquired over a period of time. Individuals acquire attitudes from various sources. The most common sources we will discuss now. The first common source of formation of attitude is direct experience. Individuals' own direct experiences, whether favorable or unfavorable, towards an object or a person are the major source of attitude formation. For example, if an employee received his first promotion in an organization just after 6 months of his joining, his colleagues will likely to believe that they also will get their promotion after 6 months. Second source of attitude formation is classical conditioning and attitudes. Formation of attitudes can also be explained on the basis of principles of learning. Classical conditioning principle of learning explains that people tend to develop an association between various objects and emotional reactions accompanying them. For example, an employee develops a positive attitude towards his new assignment because on this assignment he will get to work at a beautiful hilly area of the country. Next source of attitude formation is operant conditioning. Another learning principle, operant conditioning, is also used to explain the process of attitude formation. This principle explains that attitudes that are reinforced either verbally or non-verbally tend to be maintained, or the attitudes which elicit unwanted responses from others tend to be changed. Vicarious learning. It is a type of learning in which a person learns by observing others. This type of learning also accounts for attitude development, specifically when the person does not have a direct personal experience with the object. In such cases, an individual can develop his attitude towards the object by observing others. Generally, children adopt the attitude of their parents through vicarious learning processes. Another very common example of vicarious learning is developing attitudes by watching television, movies, and other media sources. Another source of attitude formation is family and peer groups. A person can also develop the attitudes by imitating his parents, teachers, or colleagues. People observe the way their family and friends behave and start shaping their attitude and behavior to align with theirs. Next source of attitude formation is neighborhood. Our neighborhood and surroundings also provide us a very strong and influential framework of cultural facilities, religious and ethnic groups. The people belonging to different culture or ethnic groups may have different attitudes and behaviors. Individuals tend to accept or deny some of these attitudes in accordance to the value system. Next source of attitude formation is economic status and occupations. Economic status and occupation of an individual also influence the process of attitude formation. The socio-economic background and occupation of an individual contribute a lot in developing the present and future attitudes. Mass communication. All types of mass media, television, radio, magazines, newspapers, and any other media which provides large quantity of information to the audience also influence attitude development. The information communicated through the mass media is constructed in such a way to cater the attitude of the audience. On the other hand, people also select the particular form of mass communication that reflect their attitude towards various issues. Now we will discuss the process of attitude change. Attitudes of the employees are not always rigid. They can be changed. It is always in the best interest of the organization to try for the change. But changing attitude of employees is not so easy because there are many barriers to it. So firstly we will discuss barriers to change. There are a number of barriers which can prevent people from changing their attitudes. Now we will discuss the barriers one by one. The first barrier to change the attitude is balance and consistency. The major obstacle to change human attitude is balance and consistency. It means that human beings always prefer the state of consistency between their attitudes and behaviors. When attitudes and behaviors are not consistent, individuals start feeling uncomfortable and tend to reduce the inconsistency and restore the state of consistency between attitude and behavior. In order to reduce this discomfort, people generally either change their attitude or alter their behavior or perceptually distort the circumstances. Another barrier to change the attitude is prior commitments. This usually occurs when people have their prior commitments for some other course of action and because of that they are unwilling to change. Publicly expressed attitude. When attitudes have been expressed publicly, they are more difficult to change. This happens because it is very difficult for someone to admit that they were carrying faulty attitude earlier. The next barrier to change the attitude is insufficient information. Sometimes people don't find any strong reason to change their attitude. The supervisor may not like a particular attitude of an employee, but unless or until he shows the employee
that his negative attitude will not let him grow in the organization, he will never change his attitude. Therefore, sufficient information has to be provided to the employee in order to change the attitude.
Dear students, now we will discuss ways of overcoming the barriers and changing the attitude. First way of overcoming the barrier and changing the attitude is providing new information. Providing new information will help an individual changing his attitude. Negative attitudes are usually formed due to lack of sufficient information. Sometimes new information changes the previously held beliefs and attitudes of the people. For example, generally, workers become prejudiced and hold negative attitude towards intentions of the management. If they are provided with information that management actually cares for their welfare, they can easily change their attitude.
The another method of changing the attitude is use of fear. Fear can easily change the attitude, but the change depends upon the degree of fear used. For example, if very low level of fear is used, people generally ignore it because warnings are not very strong. If moderate level of fear is used, people tend to change their attitude because they get aware and conscious about the situation. If very high degree of fear is used, people again tend to reject the message because warnings are too threatening that they are very difficult to believe. Influence of friends and peers. Attitudes can also be changed if friends or peers of an individual persuade him to change. But such change also depends upon the credibility of the person persuading to change. Peers with very high credibility can significantly exercise their influence than those who have low credibility. Another way of changing the attitude is co-opting approach. This means that involving the people who are dissatisfied with the situation can improve the situation. Another method of changing the attitude is by having training sessions. Use of training sessions can also change the attitude of employees. During training sessions, sharing and personalizing the experiences and practicing new behaviors can stimulate the attitude change among the employees. Now we will discuss types of attitude change. The change in the attitude can be classified into two categories: congruent change and incongruent change. Congruent change. This change involves changing the attitude in the same direction, but intensity of the feeling is reduced. For example, if you dislike your colleague, the feeling of disliking may prevail, but intensity or degree of disliking will be reduced. Second type is incongruent change. Incongruent change involves change in the direction of attitude itself from negative to positive or vice versa towards an object or a person.
So students, let us now summarize what we have learned in this module. Attitude of employees is very important for the management because of its influence on the behavior, perception, and other work-related behaviors. Bringing about the desirable change in the attitude and values of the employees is the biggest challenge for the management. How do attitudes develop? How do attitudes change? To answer this question, a number of theories have been proposed by various psychologists. These theories help us explaining the process of attitude formation and change. These theories have been categorized as cognitive consistency theories, functional theory, and social judgmental theory. These theories assumes that people seek consistency between their attitude and behavior. People endeavor to reconcile their divergent beliefs, attitudes, and behavior to attain the consistency and to appear more rational.